three great saints: St. Ambrose, St. Monica, and Augustine.
Okay, this is going to be good.
This is good. St. Ambrose, you know, everybody knows Augustine, and most people know about St. Monica. But people don't realize what an incredible saint Ambrose was. He was highly revered, very respectful, very cultured, very loving and caring. He was his tenderness with people was amazing. He really had a big influence in Augustine's conversion. And of course, his mother, Monica, had a lot to do with that, because you know, it took 30 years before St. Augustine really began to grapple with his conversion. The process started when he was 30. It ended when he was 33. 3 years of struggling. And his biggest struggle, because this ties in with what we talked about Maria Goretti, was chastity. This was his prayer during this period. Lord, make me chaste, but not yet. So,
he was a playboy.
So again, we could see, well, he had two mistresses and he had an illegitimate child. So here we see, you know, how hard it is to combat sins that one embraces that are habit forming that you've rationalized yourself into. And yet, this man becomes, I mean, a great saint. He founded like 20 monasteries, founded his own religious community. He was a bishop of Hippo. He really, what he really wanted was to spend his life in prayer in a monastery and really repenting for his sins and praying for the conversion of the world. And after 4 or 5 years after his baptism, he happens to go into Hippo to see a friend, and the bishop had been praying for someone who could preach well, because the bishop was from the East and he wasn't that good in Latin. And he sees Augustine, he says to the people, what about Augustine? They all knew who he was. And he gets, by acclamation, and he finds himself being pulled in to become a bishop, which he didn't want. And he becomes this great bishop and one of the great intellects in all of Christianity. I mean, he and Thomas Aquinas are the two great intellects in Christianity that are studied today.
A church doctor, wouldn't
One of
he?
the great doctors of the church. Our present Holy Father is greatly influenced by the writings of St. Augustine.
Now, St. Augustine really gives hope, and St. Monica, to mothers, right? So many parents.
Well, see, St. Ambrose was like a spiritual director.
Okay.
And so she's coming to St. Ambrose and weeping because she sees the path her son is going. This is very encouraging to parents. And Ambrose says, it is impossible that a son of so many tears will be lost, meaning that God will pour grace on him so superabundantly that at some point he will convert.
What great, merciful words, weren't they? She needed to hear that, I am sure.
And let me tell you the kind of bishop Ambrose was. This is a fascinating story. There was a Roman general named Buteric who was killed by a mob in Thessalonica. The emperor was so aggravated, he called for a terrible punishment. He got his army to bring 7,000 Thessalonians into the circus and had them all slaughtered.
Wow.
What did St. Ambrose do? St. Ambrose held the hot-headed Spaniard, the Emperor Theodosius, fully responsible. He wrote to the emperor that his hands were stained with blood and that he was unworthy to receive the body of communion. Now, the emperor is all-powerful.
Right.
What happened? Theodosius goes into public penance and finally appears at St. Ambrose's church in Milan after 8 months of public penance, dressed as a beggar, without all the imperial garb, begging that his sins be forgiven and mercy. And of course, he's forgiven. And what's interesting, what did Theodosius say about this bishop? This is what he said. He said, I know of no bishop worthy of the name except Ambrose.
Wow.
Respect he had of a saint who was true to the gospel and is telling him to be true to the gospel. And because of that, the emperor repented, truly repented, just didn't go through the motions.
But that was quite a stand that St. Ambrose took. But he was willing to do it for what he knew was right.
Absolutely, because he's a shepherd. So here is an example of a faithful shepherd who's willing, if necessary, to put his life on the line to protect one of the members of his flock who's headed down a wrong path.
Sounds like somebody else we know, doesn't it? The key shepherd.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That is very true.
Well,
very, very true.
I got to go back to St. Monica because I'm telling you, I've had this conversation with so many friends who are struggling with teenage children or college-age children who are not living the values that they were taught. And I know that St. Monica is right there to help intercede and pray for their kids.
Well, at one point, I mean, Augustine even was devious with his mother. At one point, he had decided to go to Rome. Rome was like Sin City. And so he tells his mother he had some errands and says, Mom, why don't you go in church and pray? Ooh. And so she goes in church to pray, and he hops on a ship to go to Rome. She followed him down. Again, it's her fidelity. And again, and of course, he repents about that. In fact, in his confessions, he says something that touches me so deeply. He laments, he's saying to God, in effect, Lord, how late have I loved thee? How late have I loved thee? Because he realized 33 years of his life, he didn't love God.